Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid criticizes Netanyahu's government, calls it responsible for Israel's worst disaster in history. The Palestinian presidency warns Israel's military operations in the West Bank pose a severe threat to Palestinian territories. And China emphasizes Gaza and the West Bank as the homeland of Palestinians, rejects their use as bargaining chips in political negotiations. It's 4 p.m. call local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. As Gaza continues to face a dire humanitarian crisis, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has met today with Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez in Madrid. The two leaders held talks focused on the reconstruction of Gaza, reaffirming their commitment to ensuring Palestinians remain on their land and that the two-state solution is implemented. President al-Sisi stressed the urgent need for a full implementation of the ceasefire agreement, the continuation of prisoner exchanges, and the delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza. He reiterated Egypt's commitment to supporting the creation of a Palestinian state and advancing the early recovery and relief efforts in Gaza. Prime Minister Sanchez expressed Spain's strong opposition to the displacements of Palestinians and emphasized Spain's support for Egypt's plan for Gaza's reconstruction. He also pledged full support for the upcoming Arab Summit in Egypt, which will address the rebuilding of Gaza while ensuring the Palestinian people's rights are protected. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that residents of Gaza should have the option to leave the enclave if they choose to do so. Speaking at an event in the occupied Jerusalem, he endorsed U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal for Gaza, calling it right on the dot. The remarks come amid ongoing tensions in the region as discussions continue over the future of Gaza and its residents. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has strongly criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, calling it responsible for Israel's worst disaster in history. Speaking in the occupied Jerusalem, Lapid said that the government has harmed security, the economy and politics. He also warned that the opposition would persist in the efforts to oust Netanyahu and expressed fears that Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich's resignation threats could derail the next phase of the ceasefire agreement. Families of Israeli detainees are urging the government to move forward with the second phase of the detainees exchange deal, warning that dozens of lives are at stake. Israeli media reported that the Hostage Families Forum has called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for an immediate explanation regarding the delay in negotiations. Hamas is set to hand over the bodies of 4 Israeli detainees on Thursday as part of the first phase of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas has also announced plans to release 6 living detainees on Saturday, stating that the number of those freed has been increased in response to mediator requests. According to Hamas leader Khalil al-Haya, among these set for release are Hisham al-Sayed and Avera Mengistu, who were held in Gaza before the outbreak of the Gulf War. The United Arab Emirates has reiterated its rejection of any attempts to displace Palestinians. United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan made the remarks during a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, stressing that Gaza's reconstruction should lead to a comprehensive peace based on a two-state solution. He also warned against further regional escalation. Israeli occupation forces have intensified their military operations in Tulkarm and its refugee camps, deploying reinforcements and conducting raids in multiple neighborhoods. According to the Palestinian news agency Wafa, Israeli troops stormed several houses and detained multiple Palestinians, including displaced individuals from the Noor Shams refugee camp. Palestinian presidential spokesperson Nabila Borodina has warned that Israel's ongoing military operations in the West Bank, especially in Jenin and Tulkarm, pose a severe threat to Palestinian territories. He further called on the U.S. administration to intervene and stop Israeli attacks, rejecting any plans for displacement or any alternative homeland. And for more analysis, we now move on to Riham Morsi in our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you so much, Rana. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the International Relations Specialist, Dr. Mohammed Osman. Thank you for joining us on Qnews. Sir, let's start off. Thank you so much for joining us. First, let's start off by asking about the implications of Netanyahu's proposal for the Gaza residents. He doubled down on the statement of having the residents there to have the option to leave. How might this affect the ongoing ceasefire negotiations?
Netanyahu is just being as manipulative as he always has been. He's trying to give the illusion that he is abiding by the ceasefire agreement, while at the same time he seeks to enforce the unimplementable, unviable proposal that was proposed by President Trump regarding the forced displacement and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. And that's why he has been so stringent and very, very, very uncooperative in terms of the negotiations for the second phase of the ceasefire. He said that he will not be willing to engage in negotiations for the arrangements of the second phase of the ceasefire unless Hamas pledges to leave the Gaza Strip and the Gaza Strip is completely disarmed. And of course, these are unrealistic proposals. He is demanding a complete surrender of the Palestinian resistance, and this will lead nowhere. So unfortunately, I believe that the Israelis are trying to complicate matters in either to force the Palestinians to leave without fighting or to resume fighting and hostilities in some capacity in order to force them to leave.
Well, sir, to add to this point, that we've seen like certain fractures within the Israeli government as well, where certain parties have asked for tougher stances, including Yair Lapid, who criticized Netanyahu's government. And what you see, in your opinion, is the potential impact that it could have on Israeli domestic politics and security policies?
Yair Lapid is the head of the opposition. But of course, he has been very vocal in his criticism of Netanyahu's actions because he believes that there is a priority for the securing of the release of the remaining detainees. Around 60 or 70 of them. Half of them are dead, the other half is alive most probably, and they want to have to secure the release of those people before engaging in any further hostilities in the Gaza Strip. And the majority of the Israeli population supports these propositions. On the other hand, hardline members of the Israeli government, the far-right members, especially like Smotrich and the members of his party, each at every interval threaten to withdraw from the Israeli government because they want Netanyahu to be even more hardline, and they are pushing him. And in order for his governing coalition not to collapse, he keeps appeasing them. And I'm afraid that if he exaggerates in appeasing them, he might very well end up restarting the war in Gaza just to save his own government and his own cabinet. This is something that Netanyahu will not think twice about doing. Unfortunately, the Machiavellian, sinister realist he is.
Okay, so what role does Hamas's actions have, such as the planned release of detainees, when it plays in the context of a broader ceasefire agreement and the future of Gaza? Do you think this is something that's significant when it comes to this?
Hamas apparently is committed to the agreed upon format of the ceasefire agreement, and this is a positive sign. They are committed to implementing the agreement with its 3 phases, the agreement that has been mediated by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, and now the Israelis are trying to back out of this agreement. So on this side, I am confident that Hamas is doing the right thing. However, Hamas needs to think about the day after the war, and they have to understand that no one will accept in the international community, not even just in Israel, Hamas being in power and the continuation of Palestinian division. The Palestinian Authority has to come back to the Gaza Strip and assume responsibility so that the Palestinian people can be united under one government, under one leadership, and Hamas needs to take the responsible action. They are sending positive signs so far. They have informed Egyptian high-level sources that they are not interested in governing the Gaza Strip after the war. So this is a good indication. However, we will need a much more open and much more declared stance by Hamas in this regard in order to send the reassuring signals to the Americans and to other Western players that the plan of the day after in Gaza does not include Hamas remaining in power.
Okay, can we take a look at the UAE? The UAE has rejected the Palestinian displacement and supported the 2-state solution. How does this influence the dynamics of regional peace efforts?
I think that the position of the UAE, especially after the controversial remarks made by one of their diplomats a week ago, has reaffirmed their stance against the displacement of the Palestinians, and has reaffirmed that the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the entire Arab world is committed to preventing the displacement schemes of the Palestinian, and they are all united behind Egypt in this manner. And there are 2 Arab summits, a small Arab summit that will be convened in Riyadh in the next few days that will tackle the idea of the idea of displacement, that will reject the idea of displacement, that will endorse the Egyptian Arab plan for reconstruction that does not entail the displacement of the Palestinians. And then later on, at early March, on the 4th of March, the Emergency Arab Summit will convene and probably endorse and adopt the Egyptian plan of reconstruction. And I think that the United Arab Emirates is a key proponent in supporting this course of action.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. From Cairo, that was the international relations expert, Dr. Mohammed Osman. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. And now back to you, Rana, in the studio.
Thank you so much, Riham. China has urged for a peaceful resolution to the crisis in Gaza, emphasizing the need for dialogue and negotiation in accordance with the United Nations Charter. During a Security Council briefing, China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Fu Kong, has reiterated his country's position on resolving global conflicts through diplomatic means, stressing that the ongoing war in Gaza requires urgent de-escalation and a negotiated settlement. He further called for parties to engage in dialogue to prevent further humanitarian deterioration and ensure long-term stability in the region. China has further emphasized that Gaza and the West Bank are the homeland of Palestinian people and should not be used as bargaining chip in political negotiations. Speaking at the United Nations Security Council, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi reaffirmed Beijing's support for a 2-state solution. His remarks come amid international criticism of U.S. President Donald Trump's recent proposal for the United States to take over Gaza and relocate its residents. Wang underscored China's stance on upholding Palestinian sovereignty and urged the global community to support lasting peace in the region.
加沙和约旦河西岸都是巴勒斯坦人民的。
China has dispatched its first batch of emergency humanitarian aid to Gaza, with 12,000 food parcels departing from Jordan. The shipment is part of a 60,000 parcel relief effort to be delivered in 6 phases through the Jordan Hashemite charity organization. Once in Gaza, it will be distributed by the World Food Programme, the Palestinian Red Crescent, and other aid groups. Chinese ambassador to Jordan, Xin Shandong, reaffirmed Beijing's commitment to supporting Palestinians, pledging continued assistance and advocacy for a political resolution. A total of 113 aid trucks, including 5 carrying fuel, have entered Gaza via the Karam Abu Salim and Al Uja crossings. According to Al Qahira News correspondent, at the Rafah border, injured and ill Palestinians continue to be evacuated to Egypt for medical treatment as part of the ceasefire agreement mediated by Egypt and Qatar. Israeli security officials have reported that the military is bracing for various developments in Gaza, having approved both defensive and offensive strategies. While the future of the ceasefire remains uncertain, officials expressed concern over what they describe as gradual breakthrough of the truce. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has said that Israeli forces raided 4 of its schools in East Jerusalem, ordering their closure. UNRWA reported that the police forcibly entered the training center on Tuesday, firing tear gas and sound grenades to evacuate the premises. The raid took place at the Qalandiya Training Center, where 350 students and 30 staff were present. Authorities also ordered the shutdown of 3 other UN-run schools through 2 continued operations. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric condemned the raids as a clear violation of Israel's obligations under international law.
Inviolability of United Nations premises in occupied East Jerusalem.
Gaza's reconstruction will require more than $50 billion following the 15-month Israeli war, according to a new assessment by the UN, EU, and the World Bank. With infrastructure in ruins and the economy crippled, uncertainty over governance and security arrangements continues to hinder large-scale recovery efforts.
A recent assessment by the United Nations, the European Union, and the World Bank has estimated that more than $50 billion will be required to rebuild Gaza following the 15-month Israeli war on the occupied Palestinian enclave. The Interim Rapid Damage and Needs Assessments (IRDNA) outlined a $53.2 billion recovery and reconstruction plan over the next decade, within $20 billion needed within the first 3 years. The conflict has left Gaza devastated, with over 84,000 casualties reported by local health authorities. Infrastructure has been severely impacted, with more than 292,000 homes destroyed or damaged, 95% of hospitals non-functional, and the local economy contracting by 83%. The report warns that conditions are not yet suitable for large-scale reconstruction due to uncertainty regarding governance and security arrangements in the enclave. To restore infrastructure, an estimated $29.9 billion would be required, including $15.2 billion for housing. Additionally, $19.1 billion will be needed to address economic and social losses in sectors such as health, education, commerce, and industry. In parallel, Egypt has initiated reconstruction efforts by facilitating the entry of heavy construction equipment into Gaza through the Rafah border crossing. These efforts are accompanied by a large-scale humanitarian initiative, with Egyptian aid convoys delivering essential food, medical supplies, and relief materials to affected populations. Egyptian authorities, in coordination with international organizations, are ensuring the organized and efficient delivery of aid, underscoring Egypt's commitment to alleviating the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The Qahira news correspondent has reported that an Israeli drone targeted a vehicle in the town of Aita Shab in southern Lebanon, resulting in one martyr. Israeli drones have been flying intensively at low altitudes over 9 towns in southern Lebanon, Nabatea region, according to the Lebanese news agency. Although Israeli forces withdrew from occupied villages in southern Lebanon, they continue to maintain positions at 5 strategic points along the border. Israeli media has reported that the Israeli army is increasing its troop deployment along the border with Lebanon to 3 times its previous level. The move, according to the Israeli media, is aimed at countering Hezbollah's attempts to reposition itself in southern Lebanon. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced that Israeli forces will remain stationed in 5 buffer zone locations in Lebanon. He stated that the military is committed to ensuring complete security along the northern border and will respond forcefully to any violations by Hezbollah. France has called for a full Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon in line with the ceasefire agreement. France has further warned that Israel's continued presence in 5 key locations violates the truce signed at late 2024. French Foreign Ministry has proposed deploying UNIFIL forces, including French troops, to secure the area. A Russian drone strike has hit Ukraine's southern region of Odessa, injuring 4 people, including a child, and causing major power outages. Odessa Governor Oli Kipper described the strike as massive, stating that it damaged civilian infrastructure, including a kindergarten and a children's clinic and several high-rise buildings. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has reiterated that Ukraine's NATO membership is unacceptable and warned against the presence of NATO troops in Ukraine, even if deployed under different flags. Lavrov stated that Russia views NATO expansion and Ukraine's integration into the alliance as a direct threat to its national security and sovereignty. He also emphasized that the deployment of NATO forces in Ukraine, whether under the European Union banner or individual national flags, would not alter Russia's stance. That brings us to the end of the news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid criticizes Netanyahu government, calls it responsible for Israel's worst disaster in history. The Palestinian presidency warns Israel military operations in the West Bank pose a severe threat to Palestinian territories. And China emphasizes Gaza and the West Bank as the homeland of Palestinians, rejects their use as bargaining chips in political negotiations. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok, and Qnews EG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.